Hey guys, so I'm here to do chapter 5. Chapter 5 is called Bill Dennebraw Beats the Devil 1. I suppose he's beat the devil a few times then if it says 1, right? So chapter 4 was all about childhood Ben, and chapter 5 is about childhood Bill. And it starts off the same as chapter 4 with adult Bill. It was adult Ben in chapter 4, but in chapter 5, it's adult Bill on the plane who's making his way back to Maine after his phone call from Mike. He's on the plane drinking a Bloody Mary, looking out the window, just kind of letting all of the new memories kind of flush back into him. And he's remembering each little by little, and he starts off with the memory of Silver, which is his beloved bike, as you know. He found Silver at a thrift shop, paid her off with some money he had earned for doing chores and random jobs, and it was really like, it's talked about like it's a really piece of crap, like it's not great, it's not a great condition, and it's huge, it's not the right size for Bill, but that he rides it everywhere and he absolutely loves it. He doesn't want to fix it up, he doesn't want to do anything to it. Of course he sticks a little card in there to make the noise, but he's in love with his bike. He feels a totally different person when he's on this bike. It's kind of like his friend, you know, like your horse, like they show Tonto and all them. But this is his way of getting around, and he feels like a whole nother person. He feels confident. Of course, you know, he stutters, so he feels strong. He feels fast, and he loves his bike Silver. So he remembers about how Ben came down into the Barrens that day after Henry Bowers left, and how Ben found Bill and Eddie there. And he remembers riding off while Ben stayed with Eddie to go get Eddie's medicine. As he's getting Eddie's medicine, the pharmacist kind of laughs to himself about... The pharmacist seems kind of like a dick, and he's not like the nice old man that they show in the movie, but he's kind of like a dick. And he kind of like laughs to himself about how that crazy Casbrack woman has her kid on all these medications, and that the asthma inhaler was just a bunch of water. And it made me think of, like, the miniseries was like, H2O, water, it's only water. I love that, I don't know why. But so the pharmacist is just kind of thinking about in his head while Bill runs off to go give Eddie his asthma medicine. He makes it there, and they discuss the building of the dam, where Ben kind of draws a map out on the floor or the dirt and lets him know this is how you should build a dam. How do you know? I just know. So that encounter happens. They agree to come back the next day to build it together, and which Ben is obviously very happy because he's a very lonely kid. He's never had a friend in his life, and he feels happy that these two have accepted him regardless of his size. And obviously Ben's all pretty beat up at this time. So they all leave their own separate ways. Bill kind of reminisces on how his own thoughts on Henry Bowers, and he's not as bullied by the rest of them. He says he stays invisible, where like Ben is obvious. Richie is the other one who constantly gets picked on by Henry Bowers, but he says it's because Richie has a bad mouth. Richie is called Richie Trashmouth Tozier, so he kind of thinks Richie not deserves it, but asks it upon himself, because as Henry Bowers will be walking by, Richie will make a smart-ass comment, and then Richie gets his ass kicked. So Bill, on the other hand, tries to stay as invisible as possible. The only times he really gets picked on is when he starts talking and stuttering. Then they go on to mess around with him. So he's on his way home. When he gets there, we learn that how exactly vacant his parents have been. They don't really, I'm not going to say they don't care about him, but they don't really notice him anymore. He's kind of just there. They don't really acknowledge his existence. They have a den where they used to all watch movies together and watch TV, and, you know, it's full of life when Georgie was around. You know how brothers are, you'd be messing around with each other, you know, fighting over popcorn. And that's gone now. So now when the parents are sitting in the den, it's just the two parents, and then Bill sits in between them, and it's a lot of dead space. And he always feels like this coldness around him. So he always kind of feels like the ghost of his brother is still around, and it's still kind of like not haunting, but still there. And so it says, Bill sat there, sweating but cold, in between the parents. It was so cold because he wasn't really the only book between those two ends. Georgie was still there, only now it wasn't Georgie he could see. It was a Georgie who never demanded the popcorn or hollered that Bill was pinching. This new version of George never cut up Dickens. It was the one-armed Georgie who was palely, thoughtfully silent in a Motorola's shadowy white and blue glow, and perhaps it was not from his parents, the cold, but from George that the big chill was really coming. Perhaps it was George who was the real killer from the white waste. Finally, Bill had fled from that cold, and he fled from his invisible brother and into his room, where he lay face down on his bed and cried into his pillow. So, it really describes his whole existence now that his brother's gone as not important, at least not to his parents. They don't really show him love or any caring. They don't really check to see what he's doing. The only time they really get upset is when he goes into Georgie's room, which he often finds himself doing. He feels so much of Georgie's presence in the room that it kind of feels haunted to him. But he doesn't want his brother's memory to become, it's described, he doesn't want his brother to become a monster to him. So he doesn't want to become afraid of little Georgie because he loves Georgie. And if he becomes afraid of Georgie's existence or the feeling of his presence, then he's going to think of Georgie as a monster, and he doesn't want that. So he goes and he spends as much time as he can muster up in Georgie's room. Georgie had a little picture book, as we know in the miniseries, and it describes how Georgie absolutely loved this picture book. He loved to collect pictures of his family, of friends, of whoever. Even if he didn't know who the people were, he just loved this picture book. And he constantly begged people for pictures to put in it. So Bill is sitting there, and he's looking through the picture book, and he's wondering if the same thing that happened to him in January is going to occur again. Now, I don't know if something scary happened to me. I probably wouldn't recreate those exact moments. But for Bill, he does. And he starts flipping through the photo book. So it says, it wasn't the end of the book, but it was the last page that mattered, because the following ones were all blank. The final picture was George's school picture, taken in October of last year, less than 10 days before he died. In it, George was wearing a crew neck shirt. His flyaway hair was slicked down with water. He was grinning, revealing 2 empty slots in which new teeth would never grow. Unless they keep on growing after you die, Bill thought, and he shuddered. He looked at the picture fixedly for some time, and was about to close the book again when what happened in December happened again. George's eyes rolled in the picture. They turned up to meet Bill's own. George's artificial, say-cheese smile turned into a horrid leer. His right eye drooped, closed in a wink. See you soon, Bill. In my closet, maybe? Maybe tonight. Bill threw the book across the room. He clapped his hands over his mouth. The book struck the wall and fell to the floor open. The pages turned. Although there was no draft, the book opened itself to that awful picture again, the picture which said Old School Friends, 1957, 1958 beneath it. Blood began to flow from the picture. Bill sat frozen, his tongue swelling, choking lump in his mouth. His skin was crawling, his hair lifting. He wanted to scream, but the tiny whimpering sounds crawling out of his throat seemed to be the best he could manage. The blood flowed across the page and began to drip into the floor. Bill fled the room, slamming the door behind him. So, we see that in the miniseries, that probably plays out exactly as it happens here, minus the music, which I love. So, that is the end of chapter 4. It didn't really go too much into Bill's encounter or feelings much, except for the situation at the Barrens where little Eddie was knocked down and needed his inhaler, his love for Silver, the lack of acknowledgement from his parents, and then the thing that happened with the photo album. So that was chapter 5. Chapter 6 will be up really soon, and I hope you guys learned something new about what's in the book, and I hope that you guys, I hope that this is helping. Alright guys, bye.